Open your pantry right now and take an honest look at what is actually in there. Most American pantries are a graveyard of expired cans, half-empty cereal boxes, and jars of things nobody remembers buying. Meanwhile, the pantry in a Japanese home is organized, rotated, and actively saving the family hundreds of dollars a year while also being ready the moment an emergency hits. Japanese families waste only a small fraction of what American families waste, and it has nothing to do with eating differently or shopping somewhere special. It is because they know exactly which shelf-stable foods belong in a working pantry and exactly how to rotate each one so it lasts for years or decades instead of expiring in the back of a cabinet. So I'm going to walk you through the 22 survival foods the Japanese always keep in their pantry so you can start saving hundreds on your grocery bill starting this week. The first item on the list is from a $2 can that outperforms every other canned protein in your grocery store, and once you try it, you will not go back. Number 5 is a single strip of dried seaweed that turns a pot of water into a full nutritious broth, and it lasts on your shelf for over 10 years. And the last item on the list is the single backbone that keeps frugal Japanese families fed through every emergency, and it saves them hundreds of dollars a year the moment they start using it. Number 22 is canned mackerel, which the Japanese call saba, and it is the canned fish that outperforms tuna on almost every measure that actually matters. Most American families default to canned tuna without ever thinking about it, while canned mackerel sits on a bottom shelf near the sardines, ignored by nearly every shopper who walks past it. A single can of saba delivers dramatically more omega-3 fatty acids than the same size can of tuna, along with vitamin D and calcium from the soft edible bones that break down during the canning process. The Japanese have relied on saba for generations because it stays affordable. It stores for 3 to 5 years without any drop in quality, and it works with almost any meal. You spoon it over a bowl of rice with a splash of soy sauce, or you flake it into a simple noodle broth for a full meal in 10 minutes. At $2 to $3 a can, this is one of the cheapest sources of high-quality protein in any American grocery store. And the next item is the one Japanese pantries reach for when they want to turn that simple can of fish into a full, rich meal with real depth. Number 21 is dried shiitake mushrooms, which the Japanese have been drying in mountain villages since the 1200s. Fresh mushrooms are a disaster in an American refrigerator and turn slimy within a week, but dried shiitake go the opposite direction entirely, and when stored in an airtight jar, they stay perfectly good for a decade or longer. The drying process actually intensifies the flavor, which is why many Japanese cooks prefer them over fresh. To use them, you drop a handful into a bowl of warm water for about 20 minutes until they rehydrate into something with the texture of tender meat. The soaking water is the part most Americans throw away, and that water is now a rich mushroom broth. You pour it straight into your pan or save it in a jar in the fridge for later. A bag of dried shiitake costs $8 to $12 at any Asian grocery store, and it will last a household of 4 an entire year of regular cooking. Next up is the food most Americans think they already understand, and it is one of the biggest misunderstandings on this whole list. Number 20 is quality Japanese instant ramen. The cheap college dorm packets have destroyed the reputation of instant noodles for most American adults, but real Japanese instant ramen is a completely different product, made with real wheat noodles, dried vegetables, and a proper broth base. At any Asian grocery store, you will find shelves of these blocks selling for $1 to $2 each, and each block delivers a real meal with 6 to 8 grams of protein, ready in 3 minutes with 2 cups of water. Japanese disaster preparedness kits routinely include quality instant ramen because it takes almost no fuel to prepare, requires very little water, and provides both calories and morale during long emergencies. You store the blocks flat in plastic bins and rotate through them every 6 months. The one warning is the sodium, which usually runs 800 to 1500 milligrams per serving, so anyone managing blood pressure should use only half of the seasoning packet. 100 blocks stored in your pantry for around $100 gives you 100 full meals ready to eat with almost no effort. And the next item is the reason your family will actually want to eat those meals 2 weeks into any crisis. Number 19 is Furikake, the Japanese rice seasoning that solves the one problem almost every prepper ignores, which is what happens to your family's morale when every meal starts to taste the same. American families think about stockpiles in terms of calories and shelf life, and almost never think about what happens on day 14 when everyone has eaten plain rice for 2 weeks straight. In Japan, the answer to that problem was invented in 1948 by a pharmacist named Suikichi Yoshimaru, who was fighting the calcium deficiency devastating the post-war population. He blended sesame seeds, dried seaweed, dried fish, and salt into a shaker of seasoning that turned every bowl of rice into a complete little meal, and Furikake has been a fixture on Japanese tables ever since. A jar now costs about $4 at Walmart, Trader Joe's, or any Asian grocery store, and it lasts a year or two on the shelf. You sprinkle it over rice, eggs, popcorn, or anything else that needs waking up, and suddenly the same bland base food tastes like something worth eating. This one small jar is the single highest morale return per dollar you can put into your pantry. And the next item is the one Americans only ever see wrapped around grocery store sushi, without realizing it is a survival food in its own right. Number 18 is Nori, and Americans know it as the dark green wrapper around grocery store sushi. In Japan, Nori is a wrapper for everything, and the most common emergency food in the entire country is the onigiri, a rice ball wrapped in a fresh sheet of nori. Every earthquake preparedness kit in Japan contains a supply of individually wrapped nori sheets alongside the rice. A stack of individually wrapped sheets stays fresh for 2 to 3 years on a pantry shelf and works out to 6 to 10 cents per sheet when you buy in bulk. You wrap them around leftover rice for a portable lunch, tear them into ribbons over a bowl of soup, or eat them plain when you need a salty snack with real minerals and iodine. Children eat nori straight from the package, which matters more than people realize during a stressful week when nothing else feels normal. And the next item is the single bottle Japanese families treat as one of the most important pantry investments they will ever make. Number 17 is soy sauce, which the Japanese call shoyu. The common American mistake is keeping one small bottle on the counter and replacing it every few months, while Japanese families buy it by the gallon jug and treat it as one of the most important pantry investments they make. Real fermented shoyu has been produced in Japan since the 1400s, and samurai on long campaigns relied on it to preserve fish and meat when refrigeration was still 500 years away. A properly brewed shoyu is essentially indefinite, unopened, and holds a good year or two of quality even after you crack the seal. The important detail is buying the real fermented product rather than the cheap chemical version sitting next to it. You check the label for the word brewed and for an ingredient list that reads soybeans, wheat, salt, and water rather than a paragraph of unfamiliar chemicals. A gallon jug of real kikkoman runs around $15 and will season hundreds of meals across years of cooking. And the next item is the partner soy sauce has depended on for 1,000 years of Japanese preservation. Number 16 is rice vinegar, which the Japanese call komizu, and it has been produced in Japan since the 4th century. Americans think of vinegar as a cleaning supply hiding under the sink, but in a Japanese pantry, vinegar is medicine, preservation, cooking, and hydration all folded into a single bottle. Traditional Japanese soldiers carried rice vinegar as a wound antiseptic long before modern medicine caught up. An unopened bottle lasts essentially forever, and even opened it holds its quality for 2 or 3 years without any special storage. You use it to pickle vegetables for the shelf, to season rice for onigiri, and to cut through the richness of fatty meals when a stockpile diet gets heavy. A single $3 to $5 bottle covers all of those functions. And the next item is where the calories and fat that most survival diets are dangerously short on actually come from. Number 15 is sesame in both seed and oil form, which the Japanese call goma, and it has been part of Japanese cooking for over 1,000 years. Most preppers fixate on protein and calories and completely forget about fat, and rice has essentially zero fat while beans have almost none either. Trying to survive on a rice and bean diet for weeks without enough fat leaves people cold, tired, and unable to think straight. Sesame solves that problem in 2 forms at once. A bag of toasted sesame seeds keeps for a full year in a sealed jar, and a bottle of sesame oil keeps for 2 years unopened and about a year once you crack the seal. You sprinkle the seeds over rice and vegetables to add calcium, protein, and fat all at once, and you drizzle the oil over finished dishes to add both flavor and real calories that make plain food genuinely satisfying. A bottle of quality toasted sesame oil runs about $8 and lasts a family several months. And the next item on the list is one the Japanese would tell you is just as essential to survival as anything you can chew. Number 14 is green tea, and Japanese households have treated tea as a serious daily necessity for over 1,000 years. When the power goes out and everything feels overwhelming, a hot cup of tea is the psychological reset button that almost every prepper list completely overlooks. Sencha is the standard green tea most people know, and hojicha is the roasted version with less caffeine that is safe for children in the evening. Vacuum sealed packages of quality green tea last 2 years or longer without any noticeable drop in flavor, and a supply that runs $10 to $15 will get you through months of daily use. You store it in airtight tins away from light and reuse the leaves 2 or 3 times before they lose their strength. Green tea also delivers vitamin C, antioxidants, and a mild caffeine lift for the morning. Never underestimate what a real cup of tea does for a family stuck inside during a storm or a power cut. And the next item has been sitting in almost every American kitchen for decades without anyone recognizing what it actually is. Number 13 is honey, and Japanese medical texts have referenced Hashimitsu for over 1,000 years. Americans keep it in a plastic bear on the counter and treat it as a slightly upscale sugar, and that framing sells honey enormously short. Real honey is essentially indefinite in shelf life, and archaeologists have opened 3,000-year-old jars of honey in Egyptian tombs and found it still perfectly edible. It is naturally antibacterial, which makes it useful on burns, cuts, and minor infections when medical supplies run low. It is a high-calorie survival fuel that gives you fast energy in a form that never spoils, and it soothes coughs and sore throats better than most over-the-counter remedies. You store it in dark glass jars away from heat, and when it eventually crystallizes, you warm the jar gently in hot water to return it to liquid, since crystallization is not spoilage, just the natural sugars reorganizing themselves. Every American family already owns this ingredient. The only real adjustment is buying more of it. And the next item is the humble breakfast staple that Japanese frugal living channels have turned into one of the most efficient survival foods in any modern pantry. Number 12 is rolled oats. And while Americans have been eating oatmeal for breakfast for over a century, Japanese frugal cooking channels over the last decade have completely reinvented what oats can do inside a working pantry. Rolled oats deliver more calories per dollar than almost anything else on a grocery shelf, they cook faster than rice, and they work in both sweet and savory preparations depending on the meal you need. A 2-pound canister of oats runs around $6 to $10 in stores for 2 years in the original packaging, or 25 to 30 years when transferred to Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers for long-term storage. You make overnight oats by mixing them cold with milk or water and letting them soften in the fridge overnight. You cook them into a hot porridge with a spoonful of miso for a savory Japanese-style breakfast. You use them as a filler in soups and stews to stretch a small amount of protein into a full pot, or you grind them into a rough flour for pancakes and quick breads. This is one of the cheapest and most flexible foods you can put on a pantry shelf, and we are now at the halfway point of the list, which is where a lot of people who are new to serious pantry building start to feel overwhelmed. So this is the right moment to have a completely honest conversation about what stockpiling actually looks like when you do it well. A lot of you watching this are probably thinking that you have seen dozens of prepper videos before, and that this is starting to look like the same familiar list of foods you have already heard about 100 times. The genuine difference here is the philosophy underneath the choices. The American prepping industry wants you to spend $300 or $400 on a plastic bucket of freeze-dried meals that you will store in a garage for 10 years and hope you never actually eat. The Japanese approach is the exact opposite of that entire model. You buy small amounts of shelf-stable foods that your family already eats, you rotate through them constantly during ordinary weeks, and you replace them as you go. Your everyday food is your emergency food, and your emergency food is your everyday food, and the two are never separated. This system has a name in Japanese, and it is called kaiten bichiku, which we will get to properly at the very end of this list. For now, the important thing to understand is that the second half of this list is where the Japanese pantry really starts to separate itself from generic American prepping, because the items ahead are the ones that turn a shelf full of ingredients into an actual working food system. So let us keep going, because the next item is one that almost every American kitchen already has in some form, but almost nobody is buying the right kind. Number 11 is dried Japanese noodles, which include samen, udon, and soba, and Japanese pantries generally keep all three of them stocked at the same time because each one covers a different meal. Samen are the thinnest, ready in about 2 minutes in boiling water, and traditionally eaten cold in the summer. Udon are thick, chewy wheat noodles that hold up well in hot broths and take about 5 to 7 minutes to cook. Soba are made from buckwheat flour rather than wheat, which makes them naturally gluten-free when you check the label for 100% buckwheat, and they contain far more protein and fiber than any of the wheat noodle options. All three of these varieties store easily for 2 to 3 years in their original packaging, and they cost about $3 to $6 per package at Asian markets or online. The Japanese trick worth stealing is that the water you cook the noodles in becomes a light broth on its own, and you save it to use as the base for tomorrow's soup rather than pouring it down the drain. And the next item is the one that nearly every American pantry already contains, which is why it is worth spending a minute on the small change that would dramatically improve it. Number 10 is canned tuna, and Americans buy more canned tuna than any other single canned protein, but most families are buying the wrong version of it out of habit. The Japanese approach to canned tuna is to always choose the oil-packed variety over the water-packed variety because the oil delivers real fat calories along with the protein, and the flavor is dramatically richer when the fish has been sitting in olive oil rather than watery brine. Oil-packed tuna stays good for 3 to 5 years in the can, and the oil itself acts as a natural preservative that keeps the fish tender and prevents the dry, cardboard texture that water-packed tuna often develops. When you open the can, you use the oil right along with the fish rather than draining it away, because those are real calories that your body needs during any period when food is being rationed. A can runs $2 to $3, exactly the same as the water-packed version sitting right next to it, so this is the rare survival upgrade that costs nothing. From canned to dried, the next item is the one that has quietly fed most of the developing world for the past several thousand years. Number 9 is dried beans. And while American preppers tend to reach for pinto beans and black beans out of cultural habit, Japanese pantries stockpile soybeans and azuki beans instead, and both are objectively more useful in a real survival context. Soybeans, which the Japanese call daizu, are a complete protein and can be sprouted for fresh vitamins even in the middle of winter, ground into a flour called kanako for baking, or slowly cooked into homemade tofu when you have the fuel and time to do it. Azuki beans are the small red beans behind most traditional Japanese sweets, and they make a hearty, slightly sweet porridge that has been served to sick people and new mothers in Japan for over 1,000 years. Both varieties store for up to 30 years when packed into mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, and they run $2 to $3 a pound in bulk from any Asian grocery store or from Amazon. You soak them overnight before cooking, then simmer them for 1 to 2 hours until tender, and you have protein, fiber, and calories for pennies per serving. The one warning is that people with soy allergies obviously need to skip the daizu, and if genetically modified crops are a concern for your household, you can specifically look for non-GMO or organic varieties. And with a shelf full of beans that need heat and water to actually eat, the next item is the one that makes all of them worth cooking. Number 8 is cooking oil in 2 forms. And one of the biggest quiet failures in American prepping is treating oil as an afterthought. Japanese pantries always keep a neutral high heat oil on hand for actual cooking, separate from the toasted sesame oil used for finishing. The neutral option in Japan is usually rice bran, oil, or canola, both of which handle high temperatures well and cost only a few dollars a bottle. Neutral oils stay good for 1 to 2 years in a sealed bottle stored in a dark cabinet, and refined coconut oil pushes that shelf life to 3 or 4 years if you want an even longer term option. The storage rule that most home cooks get wrong is keeping the oil next to the stove where heat and light hit it every single day, which cuts its shelf life dramatically. You store it in a cool cabinet away from the range, and you buy either small bottles you can rotate through quickly or one large bottle you can pour from into a small everyday container. Without oil in the pantry, everything else on this list becomes a rationed survival meal rather than actual food you would want to eat. And with calories now in place, The next item is the one that preserves nearly everything else in your pantry from spoiling. Number 7 is sea salt in real bulk, and Japanese kitchens treat salt with a seriousness that most American kitchens completely lack. The Japanese have been harvesting salt from the sea along coastlines like Okinawa for over 2,000 years, and shio remains a central ingredient in preserving vegetables, curing fish, and seasoning almost every dish. American households typically own a single small canister of table salt, which would run out within days during any real emergency where preservation and cooking suddenly matter. The Japanese approach is to buy salt in real quantity, meaning a 25-pound bag stored in a food-grade bucket with a gamma lid, along with a small amount of raw white rice tossed inside the bag to absorb any stray moisture. Stored that way, sea salt has an essentially indefinite shelf life, since it is a mineral rather than an organic food and simply does not break down. 25 pounds runs about $20 to $30 and covers your household for years of preservation, cooking, wound cleaning, and even electrolyte replacement during hot weather work. Salt preserves the savory side of your pantry, and the next item preserves the sweet side while lasting even longer than the salt does. Number 6 is sugar in both white granulated and rock crystal forms, and the Japanese have been using rock sugar called korizato for centuries in traditional preservation and slow-cooked dishes. White sugar has an indefinite shelf life when stored in airtight containers away from moisture, and rock sugar keeps in its clear crystal form for decades without breaking down or losing quality. During a real crisis, sugar is far more than a treat. It is the fastest concentrated energy source you can legally buy at any grocery store. It preserves fruit into jams and pickles that last for years. It is the base of homemade tonics and cough remedies, and it is one of the most reliable barter items in any long-term shortage situation. A 25-pound bag of white sugar costs around $15, and a jar of Japanese rock sugar runs about $8 at an Asian market and lasts your kitchen years of use. Both belong on a serious pantry shelf. The final 5 items on this list are where the Japanese pantry stops looking like a collection of ingredients and starts looking like a real working system. And the next one is the single strip of dried seaweed that will change how you think about broth forever. Number 5 is Kombu, which is a variety of dried kelp harvested primarily along the cold northern waters of Hokkaido. And Japanese cooks have been using it as the foundation of nearly every soup and broth for well over 1,000 years. A single strip of kombu is nearly weightless and has an effectively indefinite shelf life when stored in a sealed bag, and it costs $8 to $12 for a package that lasts a family a full year of cooking. To use it, you drop a strip into a pot of cold water and let it sit for a few hours or overnight, or you gently simmer it for about 10 minutes on low heat. The important rule is that you never actually boil kombu hard, because boiling turns it bitter and destroys the delicate flavor that makes it worth using in the first place. What you get in return is a rich, savory broth with real iodine and mineral content. And after you pull the strip out, you can reuse the same piece 2 or 3 more times in later batches before it finally gives up. Broth from water and 1 strip of seaweed is one of the most elegant survival tricks in any world cuisine. And the next item is the other half of the Japanese umami secret, which is officially one of the hardest foods on earth. Number 4 is Katsuobushi, and this is the item I teased at the very beginning of the video. Katsuobushi is dried, smoked, and fermented skipjack tuna that has been reduced to a block so hard that it has to be shaved with a special carpentry-style plane to produce the thin flakes that Japanese cooks actually use. Food scientists have officially recognized it as one of the hardest foods on the planet, and a properly made block can last for years without any refrigeration. Most home cooks now buy the pre-shaved flakes in vacuum-sealed bags, which run $4 to $8 at any Asian market and keep for a year or 2 on the shelf. A pinch of Katsuobushi flakes sprinkled over a bowl of hot rice with a splash of soy sauce is a complete, satisfying meal in under a minute. Combine Katsuobushi with the kombu we just covered, and you have the 2 ingredients of dashi, the fundamental broth that underlies almost every Japanese meal ever made. Samurai on long military campaigns during the Sengoku period actually carried blocks of early Katsuobushi on horseback precisely because they were lightweight, essentially indestructible, and could turn any water source into a nourishing soup with just a knife and a fire. This is one of the most powerful flavor investments per dollar you will ever make. And the Japanese solved the problem of not having time to prepare kombu and katsuobushi separately by combining them into a single product that turns any pot of hot water into a full broth. Number 3 is dashi packets, which are essentially tea bags for soup. A dashi packet contains a measured blend of kombu, katsuobushi, dried anchovies, and sometimes dried shiitake, all sealed inside a small filter bag that you drop into hot water and steep for 3 to 5 minutes. Every Japanese emergency preparedness kit contains a supply of dashi packets because they produce a full nutritious broth with almost no fuel and almost no water, and they store for 1 to 2 years on a pantry shelf. A box of 20 to 30 packets runs $8 to $15 at Asian markets or online, and each packet turns roughly a quart of water into a real soup base. During a real emergency, when your kitchen setup might be a single camping stove and a pot, a dashi packet becomes the difference between eating plain rice and eating a nourishing bowl of soup that reminds your family of normal life. And the next item on this list is the one that Japanese physicians have documented as a defensive food for over 1,000 years, and it happens to be the single most nutritionally complete survival ingredient you can buy off any grocery shelf. Number 2 is miso paste, and miso first arrived in Japan from China during the 7th century, where it developed over the following 1,300 years into one of the most important survival foods in the entire national diet. During the Second World War, miso was rationed by the Japanese government as a strategic food precisely because of its shelf stability and its dense nutrition. For centuries before that, Japanese physicians recommended a daily bowl of miso soup as a foundation of good health, and modern nutrition research has confirmed why. Miso is a fermented food packed with complete protein, live probiotics, and a full spectrum of amino acids, all in a form that lasts for months without refrigeration. A tub of aged red miso lasts for years unopened, and even after you crack the seal, it stays perfectly good for a year or more when kept in the refrigerator, or several months at cool pantry temperatures. 1 tablespoon of miso stirred into a mug of hot water gives you an instant nourishing broth with complete protein, probiotics, sodium, and umami all at once. Add a splash of dashi and a piece of nori, and you have a real bowl of miso soup in 90 seconds flat. The rule to remember is that you never actually boil miso, because high heat kills the beneficial probiotics that make it worth eating, so you always stir it into water that has already come off the heat. The only real caveat is that miso is high in sodium, so anyone with blood pressure concerns should choose a low sodium version. A tub runs $6 to $10 and gives you 40 or more servings of soup, which makes it one of the best nutritional investments per dollar in your entire pantry. And now we come to the number 1 item on the list, which is really not an item at all. Number 1 is white rice combined with the philosophy that ties every other item on this list together. And that philosophy is called kaiten bichiku, which translates literally as rolling stockpile. Rice itself is the obvious foundation of the Japanese pantry. A 25-pound bag runs $20 to $30, and when you transfer it into mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, it stores for 25 to 30 years without losing any nutritional value. But the rice is not really the point. The real number 1 is the system Japanese families use to keep rice and every other item on this list permanently fresh, permanently rotated, and permanently ready. And that system has been endorsed by the Japanese government as the national standard for household disaster preparedness. Kaiten bichiku works like this. You keep about 30 days of pantry supplies at all times, meaning enough of everything on this list to feed your family for a full month with no additional grocery trips. Every time you cook a meal, you reach for the oldest item on the shelf, whether that is a can of mackerel from 6 months ago or a bag of dried mushrooms that has been sitting there a bit longer, and you use it in tonight's dinner. Then on your next normal grocery trip, you replace exactly what you used with a fresh version, and you push the newer purchase to the back of the shelf while the older items stay in the front. Nothing ever expires, because nothing ever gets forgotten. Your daily food is your emergency food, and your emergency food is your daily food, and the two are never separated into different categories that only meet during a crisis. American preppers spend thousands of dollars every year on food they hope they never actually eat, and then those foods reach their expiration dates untouched and get thrown away, and the whole cycle starts over. Japanese families spend nothing extra because their pantry already is their disaster kit, and their disaster kit is already their weekly dinner. That single mindset shift saves a committed household anywhere from $1,000 to several $1,000s a year in wasted food, panic buying, expired stockpile replacement, and the entire freeze-dried survival industry that American preppers have been convinced they need. The Japanese pantry is not really a stockpile at all. It is a rhythm. And once you settle into the rhythm, you never have to think about survival food again because you are already eating it every single night. And that is the full list of 22. The best way to start is to pick 3 items from this list and buy them this week, rather than trying to build the whole pantry in one trip and giving up by Friday. Grab a few cans of mackerel, or a bag of dried shiitake mushrooms, or a bottle of real soy sauce, or a jar of honey. And grab one from the final stretch, so a tub of miso or a bag of rice. Start there, cook with them this week, and by the end of the first month, you will already notice the difference in your grocery bill and the calm of a kitchen that is finally working with you instead of against you. Now, I want to hear from you. What's in your pantry right now, and what new things are you planning on adding to your pantry? Let me know in the comments. And click the video appearing on your screen for more.